Township Council is called to order. In accordance with Section 5, the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, be advised that adequate notice of this work session, regular meeting of the Council of the Township of Franklin, County of Somerset, was made by the posting on the bulletin board at the municipal complex and transmitted to the officially designated newspapers. A list of dates annually indicating that this work session, regular meeting, would take place at the Franklin Township Municipal Complex at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, October 13th, 2015. In addition, a copy of this notice is and has been available to the public and is on file in the office of the municipal clerk. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation, which will be given by Deputy Mayor Francois.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we gather here today as members of the Township Council, we pray that we are ever mindful of opportunities to render our service to fellow citizens and to our community, keeping in mind always the enduring values of life, exerting our efforts in those areas and on those things upon which future generations can build with confidence. Let us continue to strive to make it a better world. Amen.
Ms. McCarthy, please call the roll.
Councilman Chase.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Francois.
Here.
Mayor Kelly.
Here.
Councilman Kramer.
Here.
Councilman Prasad. Here. Councilwoman Robinson.
Here.
Councilwoman Sherman.
Here.
Councilman Vasanella.
Here.
Councilman Wright.
Okay. For those of you out in the audience, there are copies of our agenda over on the corner by our clerk. And if you are keeping track, we are on number 5, which are the commendations and proclamations. From what I understand, we're going to pull those from the agenda, and since the people accepting the commendations and proclamations are not here, so we'll just push those off to the next meeting and move forward with the number 6, the public discussion. Is there a motion to open the meeting for public discussion?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. This meeting is open for public discussion on any item of interest which does not have a public hearing of its own. Anyone interested in speaking, please raise your hand, and when recognized, give your name and address. Mr. Tibbs.
I don't know. Just make sure it's on. Yeah, it is now. Okay. John H. Tibbs, 25 Parkside. I just want to clear the air on a couple of things that's been in my mind for the past several weeks. First of all, I think this town knows that I'm not a racist. I wish the lady was here before that got kind of offended when I said that, but I think my record would show that I'm not a racist. I never have been. I'm too interested in Jesus Christ and doing his work. That's why I'm not. I would like to also tell Mayor Kelly, I'm sorry that when I made my last statements that you felt was offended that I singled you out in terms of the statement I was making. I was not singling you out. I was just talking in a blank statement in terms of how I felt about certain things that was going on in town and the different parties that was responsible for presenting, taking care of the people. And matter of fact, Mayor Kelly, about 3 weeks ago, I was in church and I said a prayer for you. Personally said a prayer for you during the time that you were going through your condition and so forth. So I'm hoping, they always tell me in church that prayers always work. So I'm hoping that you have gotten tremendously better that last time I said the prayer for you. So I'm very fond of you, Mayor Kelly, as well as Brian Levine, the rest guys, The most important thing I wanted to talk about today was the fact that I'm going to make a recommendation that a comment in terms of the Public Works Department and Mr. Carl Hawk. I was kind of offended that the admiration for the most beautiful memorial to the 9/11 victims that that's being placed in front of the council building, and I'm very proud of it. And I hope that Manager Bornlacher would perhaps, if I don't know how to make a recommendation or to make a nomination or whatever, that every person that was involved in that 9/11, building that 9/11 monument, would be commended for a commendation, to present a commendation. Every one of the ones that you named last week, that I'll make a recommendation. Every one of them. There's a number of people get commendations all the time. There's some people in the recreation department got so many commendations they refuse to get. They didn't want to try to get up to get it. This time, I think it's worthy, and it should be presented to the Public Works Department. And all the names that Councilor Vornlacher read off last week should be received a commendation for the work of the beautiful monument that was about to present it to the township. And I also like to thank, of course, Councilman Prasad and the other gentlemen that spearheaded and was in charge of having that monument built, because I think it's one of the most I don't know, Raj, you have to help me out. Things that could beautiful things that could happen to Franklin Township, and it'll be there forever. We'd be long gone and still be there. And I hope you guys compliment Councilman Prasad for his beautiful work of spearheading and getting that thing done. It's the most tremendous thing. And I know last week, none of you guys had the opportunity to thank Councilman Prasad for his work in building that monument out there. That's the most important. Oh, the other thing I did want to talk about. Now, you know this is coming. Last week, I was really, really offended by the very hate talk and cursing language that was directed at Council Prasad. And I always thought that this council chambers was kind of sacred, Councilman. I'm thinking about Mayor Kelly at this particular time, to allow that kind of hate language and talk directed at some of the people on the board. Now, I don't think there's any place in this township for any type of a hate group of any sorts. And I think that was very, very deserving of the council and council and the women on the council to have some other people curse and so forth at certain individuals on the council. I don't know how to say the right thing, but I think you get my drift. And I mean, if the men in the audience can't control their women, perhaps their women should let them go someplace else, because the type of hate group is not allowed in this town here. It will not be withstood. And if they want to leave this community with that hate language, I would welcome them to leave, because this is the type of community that no longer will handle that type of language in this council. And I thank you very much, and I'm working on the future plans for the council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else from the audience that would like to speak?
My name is Carol Peterson, and I live on Lake Avenue in Somerset. Council members, mayor, some of you have heard me come here before. I'm here to address what I consider a severe health threat to the residents of not only Franklin, but surrounding areas. I have nothing against the group I'm going to be speaking about. I have many who are friends who come from those families. However, for the past 3 years, a home in a residential area has been preparing and now is doing it night and day, food to service fast food restaurants. Legally, this is not allowed in other parts of the state, and I'm sorry that the manager has decided to walk out. However, People become ill. I have been in healthcare 50 years. I have worked with people, emergency rooms, on the unit, as a manager, as a staff nurse, who have become desperately ill from eating contaminated food. Food that has been prepared, who knows where. Some of those poor individuals, because of immune compromise or age, have died. If you have never seen a person who's become severely ill from eating contaminated food, I hope you never do. Mr. Kramer is associated with healthcare. I presume he has, maybe he has not. The problem is, I live in a residential zone. I have asked the health department to address this. I have asked the zoning board to address this. Still, it goes on. I have a feeling a week and a half ago to 2 weeks now, they must have been cited perhaps by Middlesex County. I'm not sure because it crosses border lines. They are servicing fast food restaurants in Somerset County as well as Franklin Township and Middlesex County. They have come via New York, where a strict law has been passed that you no longer in Chinatown can prepare food in your home and serve it in a restaurant. They have come via Manalapan, Monroe, Edison, and now are in Franklin Township. I know they're cooking because I happen to have the home behind them where it entraps. And it's not only entrapping through attic vents, closed windows and doors, but the dumping that's going on in the sewer line, because I'm right off of the major sewer line. And so my basement, my house throughout smells like Thai food. I'm asking that this council consider not just addressing through the health department the sanitary conditions of a restaurant, but also that they know where the food is prepared, how long it's sitting in this home, then sitting outside, and a lady who is making tofu is making it with her hands and has been observed. And I thank you very much. I'll take comments at home because I need to go back to help babysit, unless you're now addressing them right away.
Does anybody have any
I was
comments or questions?
I was just wondering if the township attorney could, I mean, are there specific ordinances?
Well, there are health laws,
Right.
right? So, I mean, they're really, and the enforcement.
Matter's
mechanism-
been referred to the health department.
Right,
I
it's
don't
the-
know
and
that we
it's-
need a lengthy discussion here. It was,
That-
the complaint that Mrs. Peterson just made was made directly to the health department. And it
Okay.
was also addressed at your annual health report, Board of Health report from Dr. Masaba.
Okay, so they're aware of the site, and they will inspect the site as appropriate. Thank you.
The health department has investigated the
Thank you.
complaint.
Can I make one comment? They speak English as well as you and I, and you're never going to catch a thief if you call ahead and tell him you're coming.
Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak?
Good evening, everybody. I caught the tail end of Mr. Tibbs' remarks, and he said something about being able to control your women. I've never been able to do it.
Okay, Bill, you go.
Okay.
Careful, Bill.
Straight like, I sit next to a woman.
Well, they know where it's coming from. Anyway, thank you, everybody. Well, Mr. Tibbs sort of addressed, I was going to make a glib remark, but about remarks made by the Tranquility Group, one of the last meetings. But Mr. Tibbs was right in that you have to keep a certain decorum in here. I tried to do it, so I will not pass that paragraph. Anyway, I want to make a comment about the mayoral race. Franklin has had a choice between two motivated candidates, but I am still comfortably voting for Phil Kramer. I think it's important to know why. Councilman Kramer has earned my intellectual respect countless times. This is certainly not an insult to Mr. Kelly. He has only earned my training wheels of respect in the short time. Most of the issues like saving Bennett's Lane from 600 houses or a large park are far more complicated than even the closest observers understand, and I think everybody agrees. I've watched these things pretty closely. As a private citizen, I can't understand the whole issue, but I can have confidence in the person making the decisions. Mr. Kramer has earned that confidence. Mr. Kramer seeks out contrary opinions just to test his own point of view. I don't always like the answer, and I may not always like the outcome, but I know that he has thought it through. You cannot say that about all politicians. You can about Mr. Kramer. I thought that was important to say. Thank you.
I really didn't know that.
Are there any other?
Brian Ulrich, 209 Wilson Road. They were playing the speakers again this weekend at Middlebush. I'm sure all of you have heard. It was, my daughter came home, and when I came home, told me, Daddy, they were playing the speakers. I could hear them out in the yard. And I'm 1,700 feet away. They could hear it from there. I didn't hear it, but they could. And this is why I push so hard against what you're doing now. And now tonight you're doing something with more planning? What kind of planning is going to be going on here? As far as comments that were made at the last meeting, I don't agree with some of them as well, but you know, you can't control everybody, and I'm sorry for that. Take care.
Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak? Mr. Siegel.
Scott Siegel, 2301 Avery Court. I'm members of council. I did make a mistake at last debate about the budget surplus. I thought you were adding money in each year when I realized you're actually draining the swamp. But each year, you said $10 million, Councilman Kramer, was the budget surplus. In each budget, it gets drained down each year to 5 or 7 million. Then next year, it goes back up to 18 million, which means a major tax increase. You also have a water utility you never show anticipated surplus for, and that comes out about 2 million a year. That's 20 million. And really what I want to talk about at the time, and I didn't have enough time to talk about, was cash flow. Each year you put aside $5 million for taxes you can't collect. Yet the amount of taxes that come back in is about 2 to 2.5 million. So that, I think, is overdone by that. But either way, if you don't have the money coming in, then the money goes back into the town as well. That's $25 million of cash flow. Plus, in New Jersey, you cannot do development until the property is sold, because you don't know when closing is going to happen. And we're still seeing property being developed here, Sterling Point, as well as a large complex that we saw just before Canal Walk. We went to the debate, and that's where I figured an extra $1 million. So I think we're looking at basically $26 million flowing into the city. Now, one of the things that happens is, it looks like to me you're doing a lot of one-shots. It's the only way that the budget can go from 18 million down to 5 million. And I'll use roads as an example. Roads are a capital project. In New Jersey, they last an average of 10 years for repaving. Most towns do is they bond it out for 10 years. And this is due to two related principles of sound fiscal management. The first is asset liability. For example, let's say the first time you're going to buy a home. Do most people pay cash for it? No, they don't. They go out into prudent and get a 25-year mortgage, because that's the useful life of a home before you have to start doing major repairs. The second principle is the doctrine of fairness. Let's say my road is being paved. So I'm paying for 10 years worth of usage in 1 year. Then I move because I get my job changed. So I've paid for 10 years, get 1 year usage of that road. Now the person moves in the year after me. He gets 9 years free usage of the road. It's not fair to me, it's not fair to the other person. And you can bond it right now maybe 1%, 1.25%, so it's cheap money right now with 0% interest rates, and you should match your assets with your liabilities. The other thing I want to talk about, again, is Councilman Prasad. I realized something at the last meeting about the emails. On July 28th, you sent the email to the police chief saying that we're all racist and a criminal gang. Denied you ever did it. Then I realized on July 29th, another email was sent out to all the Democratic members of the council. And not one of you said at the time, this is a bad idea. And if I had gotten an email from Councilman Prasad saying that people just opposed me politically, a racist and a criminal gang, I would have said something at the time. And we still have never learned what the role was of our Deputy Mayor Kimberly Francois, the role of our Democratic Assemblyman Joe Danielson, and why Councilman Prasad lied about the FBI, why he lied in the first place, and why he's never explained about the FBI memo that he sent was not from a person who did not understand English, who did not know about our political system like he did. And this whole thing really disturbs me, and until we get the truth about exactly what happened here, I'm going to keep asking the questions. So I would suggest, Councilman Prasad and Deputy Mayor, that you still become clean. Because once you come clean and you're honest, it'll probably end at that point. But if you want to keep hearing it, that's the way it's going to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just address one of the comments there.
thing,
And
Mr. Mayor.
there's a number of comments that I'd like to address, but I don't think we have enough time to do that. And if Mr. Siegel wants to speak with me privately, he certainly has the ability to call me, and I've offered that before, and I offer it again. You made one statement about the reserve for uncollected taxes. Right. The reserve for uncollected taxes is the result of a complex formula that the state mandates be used to determine how much is budgeted annually by each municipality in the state for the reserve for uncollected taxes. And it's not for taxes that we don't collect from our taxpayers. It's to ensure that we have enough cash on hand to pay things like the school board tax or the fire district tax or the county tax. It's not something that we have any option on. The reserve for uncollected taxes is mandated by formula by the state.
So the state says that 97% is what you have to.
It has nothing to do with collections. That's what I'm saying. It has absolutely nothing to do with the amount of money the percentage of collected taxes. It's not uncollected. It's in anticipation of uncollected taxes. We haven't collected them yet. We have to pay certain things out. We have to pay the school board their quarterly tax bill because we collect the tax for them. We have to pay the county the tax that we collect for them. We have to pay the fire districts the tax we collect for them. What the state does is that reserve for uncollected taxes that you include in your budget is specifically to ensure that a municipality has enough cash on hand to pay their bills, to pay their tax bills to those partners in our tax bill.
It just says 97% right in the budget.
No, you're still missing my point. And like I said, you can feel free to contact me. Our collection rate has nothing to do with our reserve for uncollected taxes.
Okay.
That's not how it works. Okay?
All right, I'll talk to you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak? Okay. Then is there a motion to close the public portion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. We will start with council comments down on this side with Councilwoman Sherman.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Middlebush Park speakers is certainly very disturbing. We've had the police out there every week, and we have looked for resolutions and continue to. Just wanted to remind everybody that what happened was we had a set of speakers that had been tested and had been working quite well for quite a while. We had no complaints from the Middlebush people, the residents right behind the park, as well as in the area. We came to find out that those speakers had been stolen, and as a result of that, speakers that had not been tested had begun to be used unbeknownst to us. And once we did become aware of it, we did work with the Pop Warner to try to correct it, but we've had 2 or 3 weeks now where they seem to not be able to get it under control. I have had complaints from residents that haven't complained for a very long time. So I truly believe that the issue is serious. I had wanted to talk to Councilman right before the meeting, but we're going to be out there Saturday, the manager and myself, and we're going Sunday, I'm sorry. You're right, Sunday. And hopefully we'll work together and find a resolution. The real long-term resolution, we have ordered the permanent speakers that will have
locked controls, and this will not happen again. They will be here for next year's season, unfortunately. They won't be here fast enough for right now. So we continue to send the police out, and Pop Warner is usually very cooperative when that happens. For some reason, they can't get ahead of the curve. So we're hoping maybe the meeting on Sunday will help us understand what the major issues are, that we can't make it work from week to week until the season is over. So that's my response. There may be someone else that wants to respond to that, but that's as I have been told it has been happening. I've seen the police reports, and in several of the instances, they have not been there when it's been loud enough. But I believe my residents that live there and Mr. Ulrich, I think it's too loud, and we need to understand what's going on. So anyway, I did want to talk about one other thing, and I had really almost said I wasn't going to have anything to talk about tonight, so I had issue number one, and issue number two came to me as I was eating dinner and reading the newspaper. There was an article in the Home News about a family here in Franklin, by the name of Felicia Baker and her husband Brian. They have a child, Elijah, who has multiple problems, and it caused tremendous amount of stress for a family. I always feel so terrible for people who have such difficulty, but sometimes it brings out the best in people. And what happened was Felicia decided to start a business called Excel Living Independent, ELI. And the purpose of it was to help in many ways as parents with a child with special needs, a trained parent advocate, and an educator who is aware of the special education programs in New Jersey. So she's going to help people. What caught my eye, and really is the reason I'm telling you this, is this part. ELI Home Care also strives to meet the needs of the elderly residents and those who are chronically ill. The Bakers, who attended the Franklin Day Festival at Colonial Park in Somerset on September 19th, where they shared their services with visitors there, found that by sharing their story and passion for helping others find home care services, many were pleased to see that there was an agency to meet their needs. The festival opened our eyes about being in the community and opening ourselves up to others, Baker said. Well, I have to tell you, all of the hard work and all of the long hours of putting in the time to make this festival a success were totally paid for when I read this article. So it was a wonderful event, and it keeps getting better with things like this. And that's all I have to say. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councilman Vasanella.
Yes, thank you. I'm sure the manager will keep us informed as to the situation that's under investigation. I'm familiar with the situation, but I'm not familiar with the investigation, and I think I speak for all of us when we say that the health concerns, especially anything to do with food handling, because it is a serious issue, as Ms. Peterson described, but I'm not familiar with the details, so I'm not in a position to pass any kind of judgment on that, but that is a concern, always been a concern. I know Mr. Kramer, and even before that, I was on the health board, and the food handling and it is and always should be a concern. So I await to find out more information as it goes forward. Road repaving, I'm not commenting on the other comments, but I think Mr. Siegel mentioned about road repaving. Personally, I think often it is bonding is a good approach. Every situation is a little different. Sometimes we get grant money. Some situations, for various reasons, you may want to pay for outright. It's a capital expense. But I don't know if the exact lifespan is also different. That's an average. So, but bonding towards paving is how we've usually done it. But every situation, there are other factors sometimes that will help us determine how to go about road repaving. But in general, I'd like to think that our road repaving in the last several years, due to everybody, council, staff, Democrats, Republicans, is better than far better than it was when I first got on council. I truly believe that. So we're always open to ideas of how to go about the financing, but In general, I am just proud of our road resurfacing efforts. Just touching base with the manager tonight about a handful of important roads that will be being done in the next few weeks, God willing, with the weather. JFK, Foxwood, various ones. We've got a little window left before the cold sets in. I did want to mention, in the speakers, Councilwoman Sherman, I think, addressed that very well. From my point of view, we're so close to having that resolved. Obviously, we're not completely done with that, but I'd like to think it's moving forward well, and we'll get past this last glitch. On another note, Saturday, not this Saturday, Halloween Saturday, there's an event at the community center. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact time. I believe it's the afternoon of Halloween. And pumpkin patch. 1 to 3, I'm hearing. Thank you. I just read it today, but I forgot to print a copy out. And I'm not sure if it's a free event, but I'm sure it's either very inexpensive or possibly free. And come out and enjoy. We have these events for children and adults, including myself. I know a lot of adults will get a kick out of Halloween. So please look into that if you're looking for something to do for a few hours on Halloween. And in general, of course, as always, be extremely careful. Lots of kids running around and lots of stuff going on that weekend. It's a Saturday, so it might be a Friday night, and night before Halloween, so it might be an extra busy Halloween this year. Thank you.
It's $5 per child, Councilman.
$5. Thank you, Manager.
Councilman Prasad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, a few things to report on. On Friday, we had a pretty large Navaratri festival, and the deputy mayor was there, and Councilwoman Chanel Robinson was there, and of course, our assemblyman was also there, and so a lot of dignitaries from around. It's been an event that's been here for about 11 years and brings a lot of people to Franklin, and this may be their first introduction to Franklin, and it shows that we are a welcoming, diverse community, and it makes a big difference. So, and my hat's off to the police department as well as the fire department for pulling off a successful event and without any instances. In going out and talking to people, I have come across quite a few things that I just want to use this as a forum to inform our seniors that there is a Blue Angel program that was pioneered by our police chief. We're like a realtor's lockbox. The seniors who are homebound, alone by themselves, can actually put a key in there, and the police has the key to the lockbox, and people can come and open it up and provide them the help, especially if they're alone. So they don't have to depend on the first alert system, but our own police is also there. And this is something that our chief was recognized nationally for. So all you have to do is get in touch with our police department if you want to take advantage of that. Another thing that came up was the seniors being very concerned about taxes going up. And as I remember, Governor Corzine had actually passed a senior freeze program, provided you met certain criteria. And if you applied, you could freeze your taxes as a senior. And that way you can predict what your costs are going to be, and they're not going to be escalating on you. So that's something that, you should take it up with your tax advisors and make sure that that is going to work. Now, beyond that, as far as the senior tax freeze is concerned, there's been a lot in the press, but lately nobody's talked about it. Now, again, the Franklin Day Festival, I want to compliment Councilwoman Sherman for a fantastic job. I keep hearing about it and running into people who were there, and they just have nothing but nice things to say about it. So kudos once again. My thanks to Mr. Tibbs for his comments about the 9/11 memorial. Ms. Patterson, I hope the health department is going to, provide you some satisfaction. Otherwise, keep coming back and let us know, and please work with the manager. The speakers, we've already had Councilwoman Sherman already addressed that, and now, this is something that I hate to bring up, but what I had to say, I have already said. I apologized. It is something that, the people elected me for was to make sure your taxes don't go up. And we have a potential pitfall ahead of us where you've got commercial occupancy rates dropping, and because it's a revenue-driven model for commercial taxes, if the revenues go down, people can sue the town and get millions of dollars in refunds. And that is something that the residential taxpayers end up picking up the tab on. So what happens is that we're all going to end up seeing an increase, and as a taxpayer, I don't want to see it happen. So what we have to do is bring in more ratables into town, increase the occupancy rates and the revenue for commercial real estate, and as a result, and we've already implemented those programs. Where Hamilton Street, we have rezoned for multi-use, and that is allowing people to show interest. And like New Brunswick, we're starting to get interest in building those multi-use buildings where the bottom is retail, first floor is offices, and then the top two floors are small apartments. So that's part of what, and the close proximity of Hamilton Street to New Brunswick and transportation is something that is very attractive to the millennials. And we've done focus groups, and we've seen what they're asking for. And the millennials happen to be the largest new population growth group. And they're a different mentality. They don't want to live in the suburbia. They want to live where they work. They want to play where they live, and also not own personal transportation, but have access to public transportation. So with all those things in mind, redeveloping Hamilton Street is one that we are well on our way. We've already rezoned it, and we've got people coming in. We've had about 7 developers who've come to this town and asked that they want to invest. So it's already paying off. The town doesn't have to invest, but just pave the way for these people to be able to invest and develop. It's similar to what you're seeing in New Brunswick. There's all kinds of new developments happening. So that's one. The other is you're going to hear a lot about Davidson Avenue, where the occupancy rates are, if you go on Google Maps, and Councilman Kramer did that, you can see that the parking lots are only 25% full. And that means the occupancy rates are full. Now, it's a combination of a lot of things that's causing that, but we have to figure out a way to do it. Now, with the county, we've been working with it to try and develop programs to increase occupancy and our commercial ratables. But it's not new buildings. It's just taking the same buildings and repurposing them for the multi-use type of concept, and also bringing in more occupancy through destination marketing that Councilwoman Sherman's been working on with the county. And today's presentation will give you some light on that. But that's something that we've already been working on for a while, and didn't want to steal your thunder, but just wanted to let you know that the township is well aware of it, on top of it, and this will impact your pocketbook, my pocketbook, and I'm a taxpayer. I don't want to see that happening. So that's part of the reason why we have been proactive and been doing this. We don't talk a lot about things, but maybe we should. But thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Robinson.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to keep my comments brief, but I was remiss in last meeting in not thanking those that were involved in putting up the memorial and having that service. So Councilman Prasad, Bob LaCourte, DPW, and I don't know all the workers by name, but I was remiss in not thanking everyone at last meeting for their efforts. It was a beautiful ceremony. It is a beautiful memorial, and I encourage everyone to take the time to go see it or stop by and learn a little bit more about those that we lost on that day that were from Franklin Township. I was also prepared to talk about roofing, but that's being tabled because I did my homework. One thing I will say is that I promised to do a deeper dive on whatever is brought to the table, that my pledge, not only to myself as a taxpayer, but to those of you out there on TV land and those that are in the audience that are residents of Franklin, is to always ask the questions. I don't believe in pointing fingers or from the dais or using taxpayer monies to spend my time worrying about what other people are doing. I just know to do the right thing, and the right thing is to do what I know what is best, where I can sleep at night. But I promise that I will do a deeper dive. I'm not a rubber stamper. I will do my homework. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilman Chase.
The Public Works Committee met on October 2nd. We learned that the new house being built on Moshe Road will be able to be connected to township sewers without digging down 38 feet to the Moshe Road main. Instead, they'll extend a line to the end of the sewer line in Honeyman Street, which is at a more normal depth for a sewer line. So it will be connected to the sewer system. We discussed the municipal building siding. No method of repainting the existing siding will work, but the quote we received for entirely replacing it is very high, so the township engineer was directed to keep looking for a cheaper way which will work. We discussed the Public Works Department's request for a mower with a 12-foot span. We directed the Director of Public Works to prepare a detailed accounting of how such a mower would save on employee time enough to justify the purchase. And I'm happy to say that the rain garden at the Greekstown Grasslands at the top of the first stretch of driveway is now under construction, and the shrubbery will shortly be delivered, and this will be our first township rain garden. I received, and I believe other council members received, a lengthy email from someone named Matt at Home or Athome about our handling of the Catalpa Park matter. I apologize for the time I'm going to take to read it out, but it contains so many inaccuracies that I feel it has to be answered, because I fear that more material like this is circulating in the township. He writes, "Dear Mr. Chase, I have attended Open Space Committee, Parks and Recreation Committee meetings and council meetings. Amazingly, the council decided to destroy the recording of the August meeting to make it even harder for the voters to document their strong objections to the proposed development plans. Well, the council did no such thing. The meeting failed to be recorded because the videographer was unfamiliar with our new video equipment and failed to hit the record button." He goes on, "In the August meeting, you brought in the parade of idiots from Edison in a lame attempt to show support for an extremely unpopular Catalpa Park development. Well, the council did not bring anyone in. The Franklin residents who want the cricket fields brought in fellow players from Edison, thinking that their support would help get the fields approved. Judging from the amount of comment I have had about non-Franklin speakers, they were a bit counterproductive. But, Mr. At-Home, why do you call them idiots? Just because they had Indian accents? He goes on, so you made us all come back for another meeting where yet again the entire council just sat there stone-faced, never even acknowledging our legitimate concerns regarding traffic, noise, flooding, endangered wildlife, property values, and quality of life. And I would respond that the council is sensitive to legitimate concerns. I think a lot of the concerns that have been expressed are very much overblown. For instance, flooding, it would seem to me, would require water to flow uphill to flood the existing residences. I have been to a number of meetings with residents about the park development and trying to meet any legitimate concerns. He goes on, the entire council seems only concerned with making the idiots from Edison happy and anyone not from the town and or neighborhood near Catalpa Park. Well, the speakers from Edison were outnumbered by Franklin residents who want the cricket fields. Any team signing up to use the fields must have at least 75% Franklin residents as members. Now, obviously, we'd like the residents to be happy with the fields or at least not unhappy. I note that Mr. At-Home does not give his address. Perhaps he is not from the neighborhood around Catalpa? He goes on, the council was very proud that they did the bare minimum to contact people affected by the development. Well, the bare minimum included sending letters to anyone whose property is within 200 feet of any part of the Catalpa property, as well as having a large sign up on the property. And judging by the number of people who attended the hearing, the people were well aware of the proposal. Traffic, he goes on. The one time the council did address our concerns was to only mention they will look at the traffic issue later. Really? When after you add 400 more cars on South Middlebush and the undersized country roads? I would say, where do you get the idea that this will add 400 more cars on South Middlebush? As Councilman Kramer has observed, objectors claim both that no one will use the park and that it will have dramatic effects on the traffic on South Middlebush. And the traffic on South Middlebush is bad only at commuting times, and that's not when people will be going to the park. In particular, the cricketers only play on Saturday and Sunday. But what he says just doesn't make sense. Let me add up possible users. 4 cricket teams at 11 players each, 44 people. 4 tennis courts at a maximum of 4 players each, 16 people. 2 basketball courts at 10 players each, 20 people. And say 20 people at a picnic for a total of 100 people if everybody comes, besides those who will continue to walk the trails. And those 100 will most probably carpool, especially the picnickers. I've been to the Western Road cricket fields when 4 teams were playing, and there were a total of 33 cars parked there. But we're going to have a formal traffic study done by a professional engineer who does such studies for a living, and this will tell us a very good projection of what the park will add to traffic on South Middlebush Road and how it compares with the existing traffic at on-peak and off-peak hours. He goes on, as if to say to the voters, we really don't matter to the council. You approved a temple. I propose that the entire council take a road trip down Route 27 to Kingston when Durga Temple has celebration. It literally shuts down the road, even with a policeman directing traffic. How do you plan on handling that kind of traffic on South Middlebush? Again, the council never responded to our concerns. Well, the first point here is that the council does not approve a temple. The planning board or zoning board approves houses of worship in their site plan. Houses of worship are permitted uses in all zones. No temple has yet made application to any board for approval, so obviously nobody has approved it. When there is a hearing on such an application, you, Mr. At-Home, and others will have opportunity to object. But because of federal legislation making it illegal to discriminate against houses of worship, and state court decisions stating that municipal boards cannot rule out a permitted use merely because of its general effect on traffic, it is very unlikely that either board can rule out the development of houses of worship on South Middle Bush Road, which is a county arterial road. But we'll have a traffic study to consider at that time when that comes up. Then he goes on, the council even played the race card, saying that anyone against the development was racist. Councilman Prasad even threatened us with an FBI investigation. No one on the entire council seemed to think anything was wrong with this. And of course, Councilwoman Sherman made a statement on behalf of the rest of the council. The council as a whole most certainly did no such thing. Only Councilman Prasad expressed this thought, and the rest of us reject this suggestion. But Councilman Prasad and people who communicated some fears to him are sensitive on the subject because of attacks on Indian houses of worship in North Carolina and Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, several worshipers at a Sikh temple were shot dead. But we certainly think that an FBI investigation based on just unsupported fears would be completely unwarranted. He goes on, now how about the email fiasco? Why does the council use private email for public and council work? You are hiding something. The council as a whole do not use private email for public or council work precisely because any emails we write concerning public work are subject to Open Public Records Act requests, which is how Councilman Prasad's email came out, whether they're on township email or our private email accounts, and therefore we're wise to keep them off our private email accounts. Councilman Prasad made a mistake in using his private email, especially since it would be open to Oprah anyway, because the recipients were the manager and the police chief, and their email obviously would be open. And he concludes, I want you and every council member to know I will be working as hard as I can to organize as many people as possible to vote your asses out of office so you don't ruin our town and home value and quality of life. Have a nice day. And I would say to him, have a nice day, but calm down and make sure of your facts before you start condemning anyone. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry for the chuckling on that one. The have a nice day kind of caught me off guard at the end. Councilman Kramer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Flu shot clinic is this Friday, though you have to have already signed up by September 25th. It will be in the large council conference room, and it is from 11 to 2. Canal Fest, yay! This is the last time you have to hear about Canal Fest, well, about the coming of Canal Fest this year. You will have to hear about how glorious it was at the next council meeting, I'm sure. But Canal Fest is this Saturday. It is from 11 to 5, and as I've told many people, it's a music festival with a lot of good food that's bad for you. If you wish to speak to me there, just give me a moment to pull the pulled pork sandwich out of my mouth, and I'll be happy to speak to you. Let's see. I wanted to say hello to the Rutgers students who are here as part of their course, observing what goes on in a municipal meeting. I think it would be a good thing for our high school students to also have to attend one municipal meeting, or perhaps at least watch a recording of it. So bravo for you being here. Let's see. So there was a discussion at the Advisory Board of Health meeting about what goes on during emergencies, in particular Sandy type emergencies. And I came up with a suggestion, and I've asked the manager to carry it out. And that would be to contact our local radio station that is on Veronica Avenue. I won't advertise their name at this time, but to come to some kind of agreement that, I'm just giving a for instance, on every even hour during such an event as Sandy where there's power outages, that they will broadcast a message from the township. And when such storms are approaching, they can be announcing that they will be the official station for that. We can include their name and obviously the frequency in our township paper and make them an official site, just so to let people know that this is yet another layer of communication. We have reverse 911, but if the phones are out, that's a problem. So I think this would be a good safety feature for the town. I'm hoping that the radio company will do it for nothing, and they kind of get a little bit of publicity from it, but it's in the form of public safety. So I think that would be a good idea. I've asked him to do that, and I hope he will report back to us about that at some time. And then to Mr. Siegel's comments. So first, let me explain to the public, not to Mr. Siegel, I'm sure he understands this. When we use the word surplus in municipal budgets, that means that is not the same as a federal surplus. A municipal surplus is really the money you have in a bank, and we have come to, the habit here is to call that our fund balance so that we don't confuse it. But you can think of it as your bank account. So your concern was that the fund balance goes down during the year and then jumps back up at the beginning of the year. That's a bookkeeping thing. The fund balance is the money we have in the bank, kind of, and basically it is always being replenished whenever we collect taxes. We collect taxes on the quarter. But the fund balance may not actually even be the money in the bank, because we are using that money to pay for bonds before we bond. So let me explain that. So every time you hear us pass an ordinance where we're bonding for $1 million or $2 million, we don't actually go out and bond. We take money out of that surplus and pay off what we need to pay off, so that after 3 years, 2 years, whatever, we can go out to bond all at once for all of those things at once, because it costs money to go out and bond. And because we have money in our surplus, that saves you, the taxpayers, money, because what towns who don't have a large surplus do is they go and borrow that money at a rate higher than a bond. So I know that's a bit complicated. Municipal finances are complicated. Apparently, Mr. Siegel had some trouble understanding them. But that is why we keep that surplus. And if you notice carefully, that surplus, I should be saying the words fund balance, sorry, that fund balance is dwindling. There's times it goes up 1 year or down one, but essentially it is dwindling. And that, when I got on council, it was going to dwindle to zero. We were going to have zero money in the bank 2.5 years after we got on council. We now are projected that if we did nothing, and we will be doing something, that we are solvent for at least 10 years. That took a lot of sacrifice on the part of the township, and that was all done during what has been termed the worst economic environment since the Great Depression. So that is why we keep a fund balance the way we do. Now, as far as road repaving, you talked about the doctrine of fairness. The doctrine of fairness might apply if you have one road. We have 240 some odd mile, 47 miles of roads in town. The average length time of a road is actually 20 years. JFK Boulevard's maybe 10 years, but Como Drive is probably 40 years. because it's a dead end and only the people who live there are on it. But the general rule of thumb from our engineers, anyway, is that they're about 20 years. We currently do bond for the roads. I don't want to bond for the roads. And this may be just a difference in philosophy, but when you bond for the roads, a bond is a loan, for anyone who doesn't understand that. A bond is a loan. We're paving roads every year. So the first year you pave, okay, you're only paying 5%. The next year you pave, you're paying 5% from the last year and then 5% from the new year. Then the next year it's 15%, et cetera, et cetera. But you're paying interest on it. By the end of the 20-year cycle, if roads last 20 years, you're now paying the same amount that you would be paying to pave the roads, just straight pave them, plus you're paying interest. And I don't think that that is wise. So, you know, that's the cheapskate doctrine. I don't want to spend that extra money on paying for a bond. But currently we do bond because we're not in the position yet to do it. If we get some extra cash on hand, I'm not sure what that means, extra cash on hand, but if we are in the position, and I actually did work out a 50-year plan once to get us out from bonding, I would like to start paying for some more of the roads in cash so that we are no longer paying interest on bonds to pave roads. Essentially, what I want us to do is pay off the balance on our credit card every month so that we don't have to pay interest for years and years and years on it. That in the long term would save you money, but that's just a difference in philosophy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councilman Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a correction that I had to do because someone emailed me about the speakers in the park. And I mentioned that Councilman Sherman mentioned that the speakers in the park at East Brunswick High School, she didn't mention that. I was wrong. I went back to the videotape. She dismentioned it and said it wasn't as loud as she thought. The discussion about Middle Bush Park, I hope to clarify that the speakers Pop Warner has and will now use at this present time are the replacement for the ones that were stolen. Now, the ones that were stolen, to replace them was a little less than $700. Well, I chipped in on those speakers so that we could have them. So yes, I'm guilty on that little situation. In short, 2 days ago, there were some complaints about the music at Middle Bush Park. I was walking around with other Pop Warner officials with our cell phones to try to find out exactly where and how the sound was heard. Our township manager, Robert Vornlacher, and I went to Brian Bidlack's house, and after further review, we heard the system in his backyard. And the township manager said, "Hey, Carl," and we were in his car. "Carl, I think the speakers are pointed in the wrong direction." And I turned them around for the next week. Now, if there's something we need to clarify, our township manager is down there, and I want to make sure I got everything correct. Am I correct so far?
Actually, you said 2 days ago, and it was not 2 days ago.
2 days.
It was
I'm sorry.
a week and a half. It was not a week and a half ago that you and I were out there. Not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before.
Thank you for that clarification.
So I wasn't there this past Sunday.
This past Sunday, we had, like I said, speakers pointed in the right direction towards Field A. Now, if anyone ever have gone out to Middle Bush Park, you will find out that we have two synthetic fields. The one closest to the road, I want to say, and has the metal bleachers on both sides, that is Field A. The other one, which has the berm and the seats are built into the hill, is Field B. I'm sorry, Chase? No. Okay. And Councilman Chase was adamant about that. He moved that forward. I went up in the stands, and what I did was, with the gentleman in the announcer's booth, I don't do it anymore, we did a couple things. If I could hear it on the visitor side, and I could understand what was being said, and then I asked the parents on that visitor side if they understood the sound that was coming out, then that's where I stopped it. Now, at that point, I went all the way around, and where that open house is, and I don't know exactly where that address is, but I went to inside of our fence to that house to make sure that the sound level was acceptable. Now, at this point, I'm going to stop and say to our township attorney or our township manager, what is the dB level at the property line?
Well, Councilman, in all fairness, I don't know that that's relevant question,
No,
but
I
I'll
will.
answer. We have an ordinance that
Right.
sets the decibel level at 65. However, that's not what was,
Right.
how the system was tested, so.
Right? Just let me finish, and we'll go down the road from there. Now, picking up on what our township manager said, the levels should have been lower than that 65 dB at the property line, okay? So I want everyone to understand that. Now, further, I'm just going to stop and say, no matter what we do, I don't care what it is, you're going to hear something. So if anybody tells you you will hear zero, I want them to speak up, because you will hear something. Now, the crowd was louder than the music. And I can't control the crowd. So when they score a touchdown or they stop somebody from scoring or whatever, the noise level will be there. There's no question about it. As a matter of fact, in the backyard that we went to, Brian Bislak's backyard, you did hear the crowd cheer, without question, without question. Once I could not hear it or make it perceptible in that area, I did call the township manager and tell them I would be out the field all day long. And if anyone had a complaint or something came up, all you had to do was call me, because I was there all day long on the visitor side. Now, of course, when we bring in the new speaker system, when we have that bid go out, I would like us to do one thing that was done in East Brunswick that was explained to us. They had the principal of the school, the vice principal, the various officials of the school go out and ring the field. And when they heard it, they let everybody know. Now, there are people that live less than 50 feet from the sound system. Understand that. 50 feet from the sound system. So, I'm sorry, Councilman East Brunswick? Yeah, was it East Brunswick? Yeah. Yeah. Not here, but in yeah, I'm sorry. Not here, but in East Brunswick. The people were 50 feet away. So, little give and take. I'm not sure how that worked. But what they did was, and Councilman Sherman did mention this, once the sound levels were set, they were placed in a box where you could plug into it, but you couldn't raise the sound level, okay? Couldn't raise the sound level. It was set, placed in a box, locked. All you had to do was plug in. That was it. Now, that included the microphone that could plug in on the field. So there was a spot for a microphone on the field to do whatever. It was set, couldn't move it. Now, let me go on before I stay here forever. The sound test that I had conducted, it really doesn't mean much. We walked around the field. We tried to hear it. I'm hard of hearing, so I had to have somebody else walk around. I didn't have my my ears on, so that was a problem. I understood that some people said that they could hear it, and that the police went to their house. But again, I didn't get any phone calls, so I can't speak on that. Again, once we bring in that new sound system, things will change. The speakers will be angled in such a way that we hope that the noise level, sound level will not be heard. We think that we can accomplish it. It's not on the agenda tonight for a bid. So again, when the township manager does his report.
Councilman, bids going out to bid are never on your agenda. It's only
Okay.
when we award a bid.
There you have it. So with that, I'm going to end it and say, we all try to do our best. And I think I did that in the email to Eric or someone, Neil. And I did, and I'm sorry I can't put his last name to it. And I told him, this is exactly what we did and how we did it. So we are working on it. I'm there, and I'm making sure that things are taken care of. So I'm going to leave that alone. Reports that I have. The redevelopment agency will meet next week, Monday, Mark.
Yes.
Yeah. The redevelopment agency will have a meeting next week, Monday. Land use, I assume, will be coming up at some time this month. Our housing authority will meet next week, Monday. Public safety, that meeting was canceled today because we had nothing to bring forth. And I think, and I won't steal the thunder, our deputy mayor was with the Sisters Network, breast cancer awareness, to walk in the run. So I'll just slide that on down there and leave that with her. That ends my report.
Deputy Mayor Francois.
That Sisters Network 5K walk was canceled because it was raining really, really hard that day.
Really?
Yeah. That
Did
was
they
that
set a new
weekend.
day for it?
No, they didn't. No, they did not.
It's canceled.
No,
Okay.
it was canceled. Yeah, unfortunately, because.
So we'll come back and let everybody know.
Yes. I have no comments, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, wow, thank you. Okay, we're on to, I guess, the mayor's comments in this. I will get on to where I was addressed later on in this. On October 16th, this Friday, there is a blood drive right here in the municipal building. If anybody feels like donating blood, by all means. I believe it is from 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock, if my timing is correct. On October 24th, something that kind of hits close to my heart, there is a pet costume contest at the animal shelter. Right around the corner, they're going to do they're going to have a contest with judging. I was asked to be a special guest judge for it. My dogs will not be participating, so I think that would be a conflict of interest, but they may be in attendance. It is at 1:30 to 3 p.m. over in front of the animal shelter. I would like to congratulate the Franklin High Marching Band for their multiple trophies at the Hillsborough Band Festival last week. Kudos to you. And I see a few of our police officers here in the back. Just wanted to congratulate them for their good hard work at the hot dog and hamburger fundraiser on Sunday. I think they raised something around $500 for the PBA, as well as about $500 for the food bank as well, somewhere in that neighborhood. So it was quite a great afternoon. Now, to pat my own back a little bit, as you know, some people have been following along in my little trek this summer. I formed to give a little bit back to the Leukemia Lymphoma Society that's given so much to me over the summer, and they kind of have a soft spot in my heart too. I formed a 4-person team to run the Atlantic City Marathon this Sunday. I don't know, my training's been a little dodgy, so I don't know how it will go. But so far, we have raised about $11,500 so far for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. So thank you. No. I'm doing it, like I said, because it is something that is near and dear to my heart. I want to thank, from the bottom of my heart, everybody who has donated or spread the word around to that. I know the PBA has been very generous as well, so I want to thank them as well. I will kind of bring it out there as much as I hate to do it. Part of this fundraiser was if I raised a certain amount, I would run the race in a skirt. I did actually hit that and pretty much tripled what I had shot for, so the skirt has yet to be picked out, but I know there will probably be some pictures floating around very shortly of probably Sunday morning around 8 o'clock. There will be pictures of that. As far as I was called out earlier by Mr. Tibbs, I did want to. I was hoping he was here. I wanted to thank him for the prayers he said for me. I know a few people have, and I definitely think they helped. They helped me along the way. As far as cursing on the council, I have yet, if there is a bleeping button up here, I have yet to find it. So if somebody walks up to the microphone and does blurt something out, I really can't stop it. I can warn you not to, but I can't stop you from doing that. So on behalf of Mr. Tibbs, if you come up to the microphone to speak, please don't curse from here on out. And as far as what he said about men controlling their women, I was batting it back and forth as everybody else here was talking, and I didn't really want to touch it, but this is 2015, and that's not exactly, for one, politically correct. Two, I don't think it's feasible, and I really don't want to go about controlling any of the women. They have pretty much made better decisions than I have made regarding that. Okay. As far as Mrs. Peterson on Lake Avenue, I come from a food background. I do understand how this works. I did reach out. I received her email, if you're out there watching. I did also reach out to the health department to follow up with this as well. I empathize. Being in the food industry, I know I shouldn't admit it, but I have had food poisoning a few times before. Once of them was self-inflicted, and I would not really recommend it on anybody, nor would I wish it on anybody, because it is a horrible, horrible thing. But I was assured that the health department is looking into this. Mr. Connell, once again, I received several emails from you, and I do respond to every few of them. It takes me a while to actually try and figure out where to go with it. I know a lot of things are said in jest. As far as the training wheels on my political career, I guess being a cyclist, I can get the analogy there. I do admit I am still kind of learning the job, but you got to start somewhere. Might as well start as mayor. And I did want to thank you for the Kramer for Council commercial. I think it was very well done. If I weren't voting for myself, I would probably vote for him. As we said before, the traffic on South Middlebush Road has come up a few times. With the recent closure of Bennett's Lane, the traffic on South Middlebush has now gone a little bit further than bad. It is now actually, in my estimation, abysmal. I travel it about 2 miles in each direction from my house to my office, and I timed it. It took me 19 minutes this morning to get from my house to 2 miles. I did not see an accident. I didn't see anything happen. It was just stop, go 6 feet, stop, go 3 feet, stop. So that is, I know it will get better when Bennett's Lane is reopened, but it is abysmal, as we said before. As far as the speakers go, I was actually in the police department on Saturday and Sunday. Sunday there were at least 2 complaints that I know of. I was doing weddings in the police department. I did actually drive out after my last wedding and go out to Charles Street and I want to say Gauguin Street on the side. I actually could hear the speakers out on that road. I could hear the music and I could hear announcements. So I don't have an answer for the speakers now, but if they can't be maintained, maybe they should be cut off until we do have the actual speakers here in town, because I know the police are going to probably keep getting reports because the people over there keep getting annoyed when they hear all this. I did grow up near the old high school, and I know every time there was a football game, which was pretty much every Friday or every other Friday night, I could hear the cheers, or actually, it was also on Saturday mornings. I could hear the cheers, I could hear the band, I could pretty much hear every note the band played. And I got it, but that was about it. It was one football game a week, and we kind of cherished it at that point. I could see the music and the constant everything getting kind of annoying after a while. And on that note, my final, to quote Councilman Kramer being a broken record, please go over, once again, go over to the Second Chance for Animals, our animal shelter, and adopt your forever pet or drop off something, donate something, and or both if you feel the urge. And now on over to the manager for his report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the interest of brevity, I only have one thing to report, and that is that there was a request for Adobe fillable forms for Oprah requests at the last council meeting. They are online and available. So anyone who wants to file an Oprah request and wishes to prepare that by typing the fillable fields on an Oprah request form, you can now do that through the clerk's office website on the township website. And that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Alrighty, thank you very much. We are up to the council discussion items, number 9A, I believe. If you'd like to have a presentation for our planning study, feel free.
Good evening. I'm Walt Lane. I'm the Director of Planning for Somerset County, and it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me to talk about some of the work the county's been doing with Franklin Township and overall how the county's been working to support economic development and growth in the county. So over the last couple of years, we've been working to advance the state plan. If you're familiar, the state comes up with a plan for development and redevelopment and focusing state resources, and the county was building off that. And hopefully the presentation will work. If not, I've done this plenty of times, so I'll be able to wing it. So we adopted as part of our county master plan in 2014 the Somerset County Investment Framework. And that was adopted as part of the county's master plan and really set forth areas for development and preservation. Go to the next, flip 2 slides. So this is the county investment.
Billy, can you get a couple of those lights? Bill, did you get the light switch on this side there?
Either Bill.
Yep. No. Keep going that way. Yeah, right on the, no. Go towards.
Right behind
Bill,
Mr.
go
Bowman.
towards Bill. Yep, right there.
So as part of the county master plan, we adopted the Somerset County Investment Framework, which is that map. This was a bottoms-up approach. We worked for about almost 2.5 years, 3 years developing this map, and it's based on some of the criteria that was in the draft state strategic plan, which is it was a further development of the state development redevelopment plan. So basically, it came up with a series of criteria designating where growth and preservation should occur. So there's a couple different areas. Our priority growth investment area, and this is where the county and the towns would like to see development, economic investment, job creation, and growth occur, are the 24, the purple areas on the map. So they range from places like the Somerset County Regional Center, which is Bridgewater, Somerville, and Raritan, to town centers like Manville and North Plainfield and the Bound Brooks, and then other suburban corridor areas similar to the Mount Bethel Road corridor in Warren Township, as well as the I-287 industrial complex in Franklin Township. So as I said, the priority growth areas are purple. On the flip side, there we have our priority preservation areas, and those are the green areas. The dark green are permanently preserved land either through federal, state, local, or county open space programs, and the lighter green is areas that are targeted for future preservation efforts. So that's almost 50% of the county is in our priority preservation area. So we also have alternative growth areas, and those are areas that are within the adopted sewer service area, but where really not much additional growth has occurred. Those are really our traditional residential single-family neighborhoods in those areas in the county, and that is the tan color on the map. And then we also have our local priority areas. These are areas where the communities in the county would like to see additional investment occur, but not on a scale that would change the character of these places. These are some of our crossroads, our hamlets, our smaller villages. So like Bedminster Village, Kingston as another example, or, Warren, Watchung Town Center or Village Center within Watchung. Areas where, economic activity would be encouraged, but nothing that would change the scale of the place or massively change the sense of place in those areas. And then we have our limited growth areas, and those are the yellow areas on the map, and those are areas that are outside the sewer service area that are septic, where limited growth is contemplated in those areas. So, next slide. Here's a list of our 24 priority growth areas, and you can see they range in sizes from the AT&T campus in Bedminster Township to the I-287 complex, which is almost 3,000 acres, and the Somerset County Regional Center, which is almost 3,200 acres, and all in between. So in Franklin Township, there's the Easton Avenue corridor as one of our priority growth areas, the I-287, the Hamilton Street, and Veronica Avenue corridors. And these, like I said, were all done working hand-in-hand with the Township Planning Board and through various meetings and public input over that 2.5-year process. Next slide, please. So this is also coordinated with the Somerset County Business Partnership. The county was able to receive a grant from the United States Economic Development Administration to complete a countywide SED, a comprehensive economic development strategy. And this plan is basically the private sector input on programs, projects, and initiatives to promote economic activity, job growth, retention, investment. So they range from a whole series, I think there's over 200 or so different projects, programs, initiatives that range from job training initiatives to physical transportation and other infrastructure, hazard mitigation efforts for flooding and resiliency, all that are incorporated in that. That too was adopted as part of the county's master plan in 2014, along with the investment framework. Next slide. So, in order to move these planning projects forward and these initiatives forward, the county applied for and received a grant from Together North Jersey, which was a partnership between U.S. Department of Transportation, U.S. EPA, and U.S. HUD, Urban Development, to create a plan for the North Jersey region, which is basically Monmouth, Ocean, Somerset, Middlesex, and everything north of that, to develop a regional plan for how development could occur in that region. So the county applied for this $100,000 grant, and basically what we did is very detailed background analysis on all 24 of our priority growth investment areas. So if you go on to the next slide. The next slide is that these are the different areas that we looked at. So we looked at all these. I'm not going to read through them. I'll go to the next slide, which kind of highlights some of the things. So this was funded by, county hired a consultant team that deals with economic development. They're very well known. Forward planning, does a lot of economic development, redevelopment planning assistance for cities as well as suburban areas such as ourselves. So some of the key findings that came out of it was our household and population growth is going to be kind of flat until 2018, what they're projecting. There's still demand for senior housing as well as market rate affordable and workforce housing, and that is rentals, not the luxury rentals, but of housing that's affordable to people that are making 100 or 80 to 120% of the median household income for the county. So these are your teachers, firefighters, mid-level corporate employees, housing for them. We also looked at an improvement to land value assessment, and that was basically what we did is we looked at what the county's normal ratio for improvement value to land value in areas where it was very low, where the improvement of the land was more valuable than improvements. We used that as a screen for potential redevelopment or underutilization of those properties. So about 18% of our commercial acreage and about 17% of our industrial acreage within the county fell between that very low level where that's acceptable for redevelopment or reuse. And some of the areas that was the highest in was the I-287 industrial complex, Meister Avenue North Branch Station area in Branchburg, as well as the VA Depot area in Hillsborough Township. So we also looked at labor and industry analysis, and we looked at where new job growth would occur. And a lot of it was basically the jobs that we're going to be adding are basically replacement jobs from jobs that were already here, not necessarily new jobs. And that the fastest growth in job growth is going to be in healthcare and social services. So it's a different type of industry that would be growing in the county from what we traditionally have had. We also looked at our business industry and cluster analysis. So about 80% of our industrial, commercial, retail, and office space are within our priority growth investment areas, and that's kind of by design. These are the areas where economic activity is occurring and would like to be increased. And then we also looked, and those, some of the areas that had the highest number of those businesses and facilities are the Regional Center, the Greenbrook Route 22 corridor, and then the Hamilton Renaissance 2000 area in Franklin Township. Next slide. We looked at supply and demand for residential. There's, as I said previously, that there's a strong demand for rental housing. And entry-level, smaller-level multifamily rental housing was where the highest demand was, that the demand for single-family homes was declining. And workforce housing, which I mentioned before, was one of the key areas in order for the county to remain economically competitive. We need to provide that in order so the employees and the talent of the businesses that look to locate here, their employees could be able to live here and not necessarily have longer commutes and such. We also looked at our office supply and demand. And this data was from 2013. We basically mined a very detailed private real estate service, CoStar, if you're familiar with that. It's very detailed information on vacancy rates and rental rates and sublet, anything you'd want to know about office space is in that thing. So about almost 27% of our office space in the county was vacant at that time in 2013. And the demand for existing office space based on current market trends where there's less space per employee and the current job growth is that all the vacant office space in the county wouldn't be reused until 2035 based on existing trends. So obviously that leads to that we need to reposition some of these buildings, reuse them, repurpose them. And then, for about 2015, we were projecting about a 20% vacancy rate for office. So while things are getting better, there's still a major issue that needs to be addressed. For the next slide, our industrial, our supply and demand, our vacancy rate is lower than some of our surrounding areas, so that we're in good shape on industrial property. And then for our retail supply and demand, there's about 7.3 million square feet of retail space in the county. About 10% of that is currently vacant, and as new projects come online, some of our suburban strip centers age, become obsolete. Repurposing these properties becomes a key issue that needs to be addressed. Next slide, please. We looked at our land use condition baseline. So most of the zoning throughout the municipalities is consistent with this priority growth investment framework idea of supporting growth in the priority growth investment areas. Transportation utility infrastructure, we did a very high-level scan of if there's different infrastructure issues in these areas that could limit or hinder growth. By design, since we looked at the priority growth areas being areas that had public water, public sewer, power, broadband access, we're in pretty good shape for that, but traffic and transportation is the key issue, traffic congestion and how we deal with that, and our limited transit services in the county is a limiting factor for growth. So we did next slide, we did an assessment of workforce housing opportunities. So we looked at the improvement to land value assessment, and we looked at that. We came up, we basically developed a small model that we ran, looked at accessibility to jobs, transit service, and residential concentrations and all that, and basically came up with about 131 sites that may be appropriate for workforce housing, some sort of multifamily rental type of housing development to be built in around these commercial areas to help start the revitalization process. Now, not all 131 sites, it's destined those are going to be redeveloped as housing, but just to use as a high-level screen to identify some opportunity areas. And most of the growth in our priority growth investment areas is going to come from redevelopment for new residential growth. There's a lot of office space and commercial spaces are being redeveloped throughout the county for residential. And then in the commercial industrial growth in our priority growth areas is really going to be on vacant land. So taking all this information, next slide, we applied for a second grant from the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority, and that's the federal metropolitan planning organization that is responsible for the 13 northern counties in New Jersey. And we received a grant for $300,000. We hired another consultant team to select 7 of our priority growth investment areas, work hand in hand with each one of those towns, and come up with some alternative land use scenarios to help inform the master planner zoning updates, and then look at if land uses were to change, what type of other infrastructure investments, mainly transportation, because that's the funding agency that funded the study, could be available to help jumpstart that process. So we selected 7. The I-287 industrial complex is one of them. It's the next slide. So you can see that's the priority growth investment area. You can see it kind of borders, I-287, Elizabeth Ave, Cedar Grove Lane, Davidson Pierce, in that general area. So we're really focused on the Elizabeth Avenue and Davidson Avenue corridors in the study to really just to provide some input on it. So the first scenario, next slide, is that we looked at what existing zoning would develop. So we came up with a range of numbers based on existing zoning, vacancy, environmental conditions, as well as the build-out potential, what that would be. So that was a mixture of office, hotel, some additional conference center space, and under that scenario, the idea would be some of the existing parcels could be consolidated to basically reshape development and look at parceling them together to make more cohesive development occur. So the other 2 studies we looked at, the scenarios we looked at, was the mixed-use office and retail for this area. So we identified some, potential reuse of different properties where a mixture of some additional retail opportunities, some other smaller scale office, as well as some residential component would go in, and what type of improvements would be needed. And then the third scenario was basically the same, but just with a greater residential density. Now, there's no number saying if it's 100 units or 1,000 units. It's really just kind of describing what the different intensities would be and how that and what those would lead to for transportation improvements. So these were all very conceptual. There's no, so the next slide, we looked at potential roadway networks. So the idea in here is that it's a little hard to see with the light, but the purple lines are basically identifying potential areas for new connections, not necessarily exactly where they are, but basically breaking up that area and connecting some of the other roads that don't connect, like some of the different driveways through the different developments, and basically breaking up these super blocks into smaller grid-like areas, and then using those new roads to frame where new development could occur. And then the idea was transforming Davidson Avenue and Elizabeth Avenue corridor more into a Main Street type environment, not necessarily creating a downtown, but more mixed use where the office and retail could be on the first and second floors and some limited residential uses above. And that's kind of the concept. So we looked at different ideas, and then we identified some potential bicycle and pedestrian improvements and those different roadway connections. And and the idea is that these roads could be either master plan roads that the developers build as things come on. And more or less, this is very conceptual, so nothing is set in stone. But really, this has helped to inform the township for further planning efforts to use these as a starting point for refining their plan. So we work very closely with Mr. Vornlocker and Mr. Healy in getting back and forth. And there's a lot of back and forth on these concepts. And this is what we came up with. So the next slide, just to kind of visualize what some of that is that, the idea is moving some of the buildings closer to the roadway, making more of that streetscape fabric, and just giving an idea what it could look like. So and if those corridors were reimagined, they would have bike lanes, on-street parking potentially. But all these are very at a conceptual level, just kind of idea. So instead of having people focus on if it's 10 units to an acre or 20 units or 5 units an acre, just the pictures tell a better story. So we have some other examples of other places like Robbinsville Town Center in Mercer County, just what those types could be. So that's what we did on phase 2. Now, we weren't done with that, so we applied for and received a second grant from the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority for the Sub-Regional Studies Program to conduct phase 3. And that's basically the look at the remaining priority growth investment areas in the county. So we're here to look at the Eastern Avenue corridor, the Hamilton Street corridor, as well as Veronica. And then potentially if there's a desire to move forward and building some of the, adding some more meat to the bones, so to speak, of the concepts and for the for the I-287 complex, we can look at that too. So basically, we're just waiting for approval from the NJTPA to sign off on releasing the RFP. Since this is federal dollars, it's a very strict procurement process. So we're going through the review of the RFP. I'm hoping that we're going to be able to have the consultant on board by the end of this year, beginning of next year at the latest. And then we basically have a year and a half to complete our study. So we'll be reaching out to the township for further meetings and then looking at exploring these other areas in more detail. And then hopefully the township can move on them if they so desire. Obviously, there's no requirement that you implement these recommendations. That's what they are recommendations, but it can give you an idea based on the changing market and demands in the real estate industry, how the township could position itself to reposition some of these older industrial areas or commercial areas and adapt to the new reality based coming out of the Great Recession.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Kramer?
So you heard a lot tonight while you were waiting about concerns about traffic. So how do we do this without increasing traffic? Or how can we even use it to decrease traffic if that's possible?
Well, I think by adding some of these mixture of uses and some residential components, that would be great, allow for greater support for mass transit, and expanding existing services, either county services or you're saving funding from the New Jersey Transit. Now, I didn't get into all the details. We had a very broad-based steering committee made up of representatives from NJ Transit, the Office of Planning Advocacy, NJDOT, the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority, RideWise, that all made some of these help shape these recommendations. So by mixing the uses, you actually decrease some of the peak hour trip generation. So it allows more development to occur, but not necessarily increase the amount of traffic. So we looked at, in a previous study, we looked at the reuse of the Santa Fe Aventa site in Bridgewater Township that's on 202, 206. You know, that's 1 million square feet of Class A office space as well as Class A lab space that Santa Fe made the decision they wanted to move to a more urban area, so they moved to Cambridge, so that left that campus vacant. So we looked at a mixed-use concept where, based on the normal trips from the 1 million square feet of office space that was there, we came up with X number of trips, and then we came up with a land use scenario that with a mixing of uses would generate the same amount of trips, but a different mixture of development. So it lessens some of the peak hour trip generation. That's the opportunities that exist here. By repurposing some of these suburban office buildings to more of a mixed use, you spread the traffic out throughout the day and potentially decrease some of the peak hour congestion problems.
So kind of you're living where you work, so you're not.
So yeah, and the idea by providing some of these bicycle lane connections, sidewalk connections that you can, and creating some of breaking up the super blocks so you don't have to go from Pierce to Davidson to Cedar Grove and back around. By some of these shortcuts, you can lessen those trips and distribute the traffic more. So obviously, as this moves forward, there'd be a lot more detailed traffic analysis. We did the high level look, but as you start to drill down and looking at through other studies or work with the county or at the municipal level, you can address some of those issues.
And I'm correct that you're recommending we continue to preserve open space?
Correct. Obviously, you could see the county, about more than 50% of the county is shown as our priority preservation area. So
It looked like more than 50% of the town, and we're we're about a third. So you looking for us to increase that?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, some of those areas that are shown in the priority preservation area may already have existing development, but the idea is to kind of show that that's where if more preservation opportunities present themselves, where they should occur. By pushing, preserving those lands, you're pushing some of the potential growth to the already developed areas where you have sewer and water and transportation infrastructure, kind of maximizing the investment that's already been made in those public utilities and public infrastructure, and not having to expand it further.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Vasanella.
Thank you. And thank you for bringing this forward. So comments, questions I'm throwing out aren't to be against anything you're doing. I've been on long-term on the Hamilton Board, Advisory Board, and Land Use Committee here, so I'm familiar with what you're doing. I think it's important. I think it's good. And I appreciate the ongoing communication. That being said, get to some points. Easton Avenue is horrendous at certain times. There are, especially in the area down there, 287, and of course the New Brunswick interchange, but right now I'll stick to the 287 area. I know, because it got bumped a few times, I believe, that the 287 federal project that affects some interchanges, specifically Franklin, Piscataway, et cetera, a spill over into Somerset County, of course, keeps being postponed. I don't know how you reconcile that aspect of it, if you have any further information of where that's going, when, because to me, without clarity there, we can't get into real particulars here. First, so I'm throwing that out. Traffic, piggybacking on what Councilman Kramer said, you always hear traffic won't be an issue. Traffic will actually be better. I would proceed incredibly cautiously in that area. So if you can address the 287 issue. And one other item, to no fault of yours or any of the people involved in this, including the committees that I work with here in Franklin, these studies end up taking so long and have so many phases. Sometimes by the time you get to the end, the stuff in the earlier parts become irrelevant or change to no fault of things constantly change. Trends change. I don't like to be glued to trends. I know Councilwoman Sherman and others have brought forward a lot of these issues of millennials. I'm not discounting any of that as factually, in general, that's where things move. But sometimes when you try to accommodate fads and trends, you're kind of chasing something, and by the time you know what I'm saying, where I'm going with that. So that part of it I get very concerned with. Again, though, fantastic work to this point. So maybe you could address those issues. And the one other thing I'm going to say, and again, this is not about being negative about this. To me, the high demand for rentals, absolutely amazing, the high demand, and unfortunately the high prices that come along with the high demand. To me, I see that as more of a product or a result of bad economic times, issues with the banks, and understandably people are conscious of, as they should be, getting into debt and the job market and everything else. This isn't an indictment of the economy, but I think it's more about that than just some people. There are a trend that some groups like to rent. They like to be more mobile or transient. I like the idea of people, families or individual, setting roots. You have to do what's practical, but on the same front, I get very concerned about pushing or playing into this rental market. It's great for investors and developers, and God bless them. But I'd like to see the world, the economy, especially locally, get back to where people are joyful, whether they're single or have families, about buying and not going in the rental direction when possible. You shouldn't when it's not practical. So I'm conscious of too much being put onto the rental market. Again, whether it's personal trends, fads, or economic changes. So if you could address those issues in general. I'm not asking you to rewrite it, but
No, not at all.
give some commentary, because I think that's what's good for to get into a little bit of the layers of this.
I agree. We can't just focus on the hot market trend of this, but I think part of it is by creating some of these workforce and rental type of housing, we're creating a range of housing choices for our community. So it's just not luxury rental or high or single family, because I think there's a mix that's needed for economic stimulus to occur and for investment to occur. So I mean, millennials is the hot thing, but it's not the only be-all and catch-all of that market, because there's a lot of research out there that's showing that as the baby boom generation ages, they're looking to get rid of their 3,000 or 4,000 square foot home and move to a smaller place where a rental type of thing where it has some of the amenities, but they're in an area that's a mixed use and has activity going on, so they don't necessarily have to drive everywhere. So, and that, while the millennial generation for job creation is important, they don't have as much disposable income as the baby boom generation. So, we worked with the business partnership and Rutgers University, the Blaustein School, and did a millennial report. So development opportunities in Somerset County from a millennial perspective, and the three things that came out of that report were the 3 A's: accessibility, access, and affordability. Access, amenities, and affordability. So they basically show based on the projected normal debt load for a student, how much housing they could afford based on the starting salaries of different professions, and so they're looking. They don't necessarily want to live with 3 other millennials and rent a house or share an apartment. They want their own own unit they can call their own. But as they mature in the community, then the idea is that by providing those mixture of housing choices, that they rent in Franklin or Bridgewater or Somerville, that when they want to buy a house, they're like, I like this community, I want to stay, and then be able to move up the housing ladder, so to speak. So providing that is, key to be an economic attractor for the businesses to remain here if the talent remains here. But it's not by be all or end all, the solution to everything. And I'm sorry if I gave the impression that it was, because it's not just about millennials or rental housing. It's providing that mixture. And we just did a workshop 2 weeks ago at the county where we had a couple developers come in and talk about mixed-use development and providing as a potential strategy for addressing affordable housing needs, how that could be done. We had some examples in Hackensack, which has a lot of similarities to Somerville and some of our other more dense areas in the county. And then we had an example from College of New Jersey and the College Town development there. So as examples of how that strategy could apply, instead of having affordable housing occur on a green field outside of an already developed area, how redevelopment could help spur economic activity as well as address affordable housing needs. The Easton Avenue, the improvements that came from 287, I completely understand. I said, probably one of the last times I was here was talking about the study the county was doing that I managed when I was running transportation for the county. The Easton Avenue corridor study, as well as the I-287 study that dates back to about 2001, too. So
That's about right.
unfortunately, some of the state projects take a while to occur, but I'm really trying to focus, as I've taken over as director for the county, focus on more pragmatic solutions and not come up with these aspirational plans, but come up with plans that are actually implementable. And by doing this work, it opens up opportunities for grant funding for either local safety projects that address some of these, for the county or the municipality to occur. We did similar work on a different study outside of this, that we looked at the Washington Avenue corridor in Greenbrook Township. So we identified some road improvements and all that, and some safety improvements, traffic signal upgrades, a road diet, getting rid of going from 2 lanes in each direction to 1 lane in each direction with a center turn lane. We're able to, basically, having this study, we basically got the grant handed to the county from the NJTPA for a safety project, and we received about $700,000. So the idea is that we've identified some of these types of improvements in this Phase 2 study to hopefully avail ourselves to the additional grant funding and discretionary funding from the state, New Jersey Transit, NJDOT, and such. So I really trying to pride ourselves on making sure these are not just plans that are going to sit on the shelf for 10 years and then we have to go and update it. So, but unfortunately, I'm not sure exactly where in the process. I know I think they're in their final design for the improvements for the ramp from the improvements combining the acceleration, the ramp from the 287 north from Eastern Avenue north and south, combining that into one. That's in the design process. It's moving along. There's the Transportation Trust Fund is an issue, but it's moving in the process, so it's better than it sitting there. So it's being designed. It just, unfortunately, DOT takes longer than anyone here would like them to take on moving a project forward. So.
Thank you.
I was going to say, Deputy Mayor Francois.
I have a question.
Sure.
So I like the priority improvement growth areas and the fact that you identified 131 sites and you utilized the component of workforce housing, jobs, and transportation. I think that's great. It's a totally different concept that I've ever heard before. But what approaches is the county going to be providing for economic stimulus to get some of this stuff moving?
Well, it's some of this work in the Together North Jersey with that regional plan, our investment framework, this study, and some of the other work is shown as examples for in the plan of good case studies of ways of doing it, and we're hoping that will allay itself to bringing additional grant funding in as these projects become more, I don't want to say mature, but as more defined on what the actual improvements are needed to open ourselves up to those grant funding, and we'll be ahead of the curve opposed to other areas. My charge when I took over as director was to keep county planning Somerset County has always been a leader in the state and remain that way, or I will not be in the job. So I think what it is that we need to bring by having these studies, Greenbrook Township was actually able to get another grant from the NJTPA that look at developing the zoning recommendations into something they can actually implement from our previous study. So they saw that there was interest in the municipality and desire to implement some of the plan, and then they made grant funding available. And I think the same could occur here in Franklin, potentially tap into those grant funds to make something happen. The county would obviously, we sponsored the Greenbrook Township application, supported that. If Franklin Township wanted to move forward, the county would definitely be supportive of that. And there's opportunities for our building with our partnerships with the business partnership and the county SEDS to help make some of these things happen, as well as our relationships with Rutgers University and some of the other universities to bring resources to the table. So if there's a strong desire on the township, the county planning board can help facilitate some of those meetings and bring different players to the table.
Help us write the grants?
I can't commit to writing the grant completely, but I definitely, we provided past input and, for Greenbrook Township, and these are things to highlight in the grants of what the funding agencies are looking for, and we'd definitely be of assistance, so.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Thank you. I think that sort of was going in the same direction. You're planning. So once you get through the planning stage, you present it to your potential clients, such as Franklin Township. And then once there's an agreement to move forward, do you step back and then it becomes part of the business partnership and the township? Or I just don't know how you get it from your plan to reality, because you're dealing with private industry and you're dealing with municipalities and county, and it seems like an enormously complex. Has anyone done this? Has anyone been successful yet?
Well, I think some of the previous work we've done in the county actually has led to that. We helped in a previous study with some of the recommendations to Bridgewater Township for the Santa Fe site, and that actually, they're basically the developer that bought the site is basically doing something very similar to what we recommended. Some differences in taste, but the overall concept of mixed-use campus is what's moving forward. So I think we have a good track record of trying to make these things happen. And it's a matter of facilitating, and maybe if there's additional grants that we can help apply for, jointly apply for, or facilitate the township apply for, that's what we can do. But really, the township is really in the driver's seat. The county's not going to dictate, you must implement this or do that. We're really here to help you as you move forward, so.
I guess where I get stuck is, how do you get all of these individually owned buildings to commit to when someone comes in and buys a campus, they have an investment and they're going to want to optimize that investment. And I guess I'm kind of stuck on, how do you get to the point where you get every building on a street to agree, like Davidson or Hamilton or whatever, to the concept and make the investment necessary?
Township could do an overlay zone to promote that and provide some bonuses, or incentives to consolidate. There's different ways, there's a lot of different strategies that can be done, but it's really local.
It's us. Yeah, yeah. But someone's done this already, or someone started as not in a campus.
There's several examples in the country, but the Santa Fe campus is an example. That's in the county. We had assistance to Bridgewater if that's happening. There's some other in Morris County that these campuses, but
Montvale.
Yeah, Montvale. There's another example. The old the Bear site in Morris Plains.
Right.
Reinvention of the campus. So.
We also have the redevelopment of the Bell Labs site in Homedale, which is a major repurposing of a very, very large building.
Yeah.
We're actually, in the township and the county, are kind of in the lead in addressing this, so I want to commend the township for looking at this.
Right.
Because really, there's not a lot of communities are sitting back, well, the economy's improving, so these buildings will fill back up, and that's not necessarily
Right.
the case from the research we've done, so.
So
The township should be commended for looking at this and keeping it on its radar screen.
we're at the cutting edge.
Partner to help you move forward.
Yeah, okay, so we'll figure it out. We're good. We're good at that.
I have a
We got
question.
good folks.
I have a question for you. I did really appreciate your presentations at the Mayor's Roundtable a week ago, or 10 days ago, whatever it was. No, probably a week ago. And I really like the examples of the Hackensack. I like the architect that was there and how he really kind of spelled that out. And I thought that would be great for kind of the Hamilton Street area. As far as the Elizabeth Avenue area goes, I'm kind of confused and I'm very conflicted. That is one of the biggest thoroughfares in the morning and in the afternoon, getting from kind of South Brunswick to 287, or Princeton to 287, and then vice versa in the afternoon, depending on which way you go. And as you heard, South Middlebush being one of the other kind of choke points in this. If there's an accident in one part, it royally changes the trajectory of your commute. So as I'm looking at that, I'm kind of envisioning, say, Elizabeth Avenue being kind of pinched in a little bit with some houses on the other side. I don't quite see how this goes from a big thoroughfare, and not to get too specific on it, but how it goes from a big thoroughfare traffic hub to kind of a downtown area. To me, that one doesn't make sense. Like the Pierce Street or those kind of things, that makes more sense to me. The Elizabeth Avenue, I just don't get.
I mean, it was more than a conceptual level. level, it may never be able to be that, but it just was an opportunity, a way of reimagining the corridor. And it could be, maybe we won't be able to, with the volume of traffic on there, to do some of the things that conceptually recommended, but that's the whole purpose of looking at it further. None of this was set in stone.
Right.
And Mr. Mayor, just if I might add here, one of the things that was considered is the fact that, years ago, once we looked at the gated communities of Canal Walk and Somerset Run, there was a commercial retail overlay done for Elizabeth Avenue, and the portion of Elizabeth Avenue that the county consultant looked at in this particular planning study was that area that already has the retail overlay. The other thing is, I'm a little confused with the statement that you made, and I'm only going to go back and put my old traffic hat on for a second. Elizabeth Avenue is actually the most underutilized county road that we have in Franklin Township. It is not at capacity. It actually has the best level of service of any county road that we have. And that's one of the reasons why years ago, when we looked at the retail overlay for Elizabeth Avenue, it was because the traffic problems that do exist on some of the other roads like Cedar Grove Lane and South Middlebush Road don't exist on Elizabeth Avenue. In fact, it's one of the reasons why we tried to move traffic off of Cedar Grove Lane and direct them towards Elizabeth Avenue. So there is some capacity that could be had there on Elizabeth Avenue.
Sure, but what I'm looking at is that road, the drawing right there, and I'm looking at when I travel on Elizabeth Avenue in the mornings or in the afternoon, it's fairly well traveled. I mean, maybe there aren't the exact capacity of cars, but traffic goes very, very slowly there.
The issue here is what you're looking at is just what that is a prototype.
I got you.
And
I hear you.
in the particular planning study that was done here, without altering the road width, and the speed limit is already 35 miles per hour, which is a suburban
See, that was
speed limit.
you're kind of getting to my next question, is if you started talking about those kind of cutting the super blocks down into smaller blocks, does that open up Elizabeth Avenue, or does that open up Davidson to a higher mode of transport to get people through town?
I think it could balance.
Use the mic,
If you can
please.
use the microphone, please.
Balances the traffic. It provides the opportunity for the multiple connections. The more connections you have, the better traffic can be dispersed. But really, that would be further traffic studies need to be done. And when we did this rendering, this isn't even from anywhere.
No, right, exactly.
We picked
Sure.
Just as an example, just to kind of demonstrate the concept, because we didn't want to do an overlay on existing, like, World's Fair at Pierce and Davidson. We didn't want to do an overlay. That's my property. We wanted to kind of focus on the concept. So it may be a greater cross-section that's shown in this area for Elizabeth Avenue than necking it down to something like this. So the idea is just hit the building design and urban design kind of concepts. That's what's the issue. So I'm sorry if I didn't clarify that.
No, I got you. Like I said, I remember from the other meeting, and it didn't seem like they were on a main thoroughfare. Whether the manager agrees with me or not, it is somewhat of a thoroughfare. It is a fairly high, it is a method of getting from the south side of town to 287.
In reality, these are just the concepts.
Right.
The
Yeah.
township can move with them, and obviously the county.
Gotcha.
This is what must be done. These are just kind of giving you some
Ideas.
starting point and ideas to move forward with potential implementation or not.
I agree with the mayor to some extent, but the area of Elizabeth Avenue north of Pierce, that's an area that's somewhat industrial already, and that might.
That's the
itself to
area
it.
that this was subject
Right.
to the study, and that's the area with the business
Right.
commercial overlay, is
But-
really from New Brunswick Schoolhouse north to almost to Campus Drive.
But from New Brunswick South, I would certainly agree with the mayor. So I've looked at our assessed values, and if you take the commercial office space that is worth assessed at $5 million or more, that makes up 13% of the assessed value in Franklin. And I see that a tremendous risk, which is essentially what you're bearing out with the vacancies. And I think we have to do something. My one little fear is a lot of this is based on population studies of the last few years. It compares 30 years of population versus 5 years of population. And so I'm a little worried about that we, on the other side, I'm arguing with myself here, we have seen these vacancies in these office buildings for at least a decade now. So we just have to be careful.
Mr. Kramer, I think that's a perfect segue to the comment that I wanted to make, which is this study has a bunch of different concepts, as Walter said, that we can consider as we move forward. I think what we want to do is, I think we want to concentrate on the areas and the issues that are of particular concern right now. And in my opinion, it's the office vacancies. It's the fact that it's not just a recession issue. It is the world has changed. People are working from home. They're working from their phones and their devices. They're not necessarily going to an office cubicle like they were when these buildings were built in the 80s. So this is 13% of our tax base. And this study, so I think in my opinion, as we move forward, I think initially we want to concentrate on the area that's bounded by the Davidson, Cedar Grove, Pierce area. So that's predominantly where the office buildings are. This study lays out a few different land use scenarios that we can consider. Right now, it's basically zoned for office buildings. Well, could we rezone it to allow retail, restaurants? It already does permit conferences and hotels, but maybe there's opportunity for mixed-use development that mixes those together. And then it talks about, and that's why it's called an access mobility study, are there opportunities to make relatively limited infrastructure improvements to make this redevelopment occur and to encourage that redevelopment? So we've talked, and Bob and I and Walter have talked about, just as an example, if Napoleon Court was connected to Atrium Drive, then you have kind of 180-degree access to the 287. We have a few sites there, the hotel site, we call it where there's an 18-acre site at the end of Atrium that you'd think, boy, that's really developable. Well, guess what? It's not. It's on 287, but it's the end of a cul-de-sac. You make those connections, maybe with some relatively limited roadway improvements, maybe a light here or there, maybe a lane added here or there, and now we have a site, an area right off 287 with excellent access that isn't maybe a single-story flex warehouse building, but maybe it's retail, restaurants, and other things. So that's what I take out of this study. I think some of these other concepts, like the Davidson Avenue and Lucas Avenue, concepts like that, I would recommend we maybe put those aside and concentrate on the bigger issues first. Just a real quick question for Walter. You had said that forward planning evaluated they kind of did a business cluster analysis and different segments or economic sectors that might have some growth. Can you briefly, I know you mentioned health and one other, can you briefly speak to that, and then to the degree that was county-wide versus specific to Franklin?
It was, the work that was done was basically based on existing data sources and trends, and it's in a very short 500-page report that's on the county website for the phase one study. But really the key is that it was focused on the trends for the priority growth investment areas, so it didn't single Franklin out. It was looking at it was more of a county overall trend. If it was in Franklin, that's not where necessarily all the Franklin jobs were not going to be in healthcare or social social type of jobs. It's a mixture, but it just aggregated to the county level just because of the way the data sources are. So, I mean, and that's also keep in mind some of the data sources that you focus in more on smaller and smaller areas, the data becomes a little bit more suspect. Because when we looked at just the AT&T campus, the data sources when they ran it showed like 5 houses being in there. So that we know there's no houses on there. So as the smaller the area gets, the data becomes a little less accurate. But for where we're looking in these areas, I think the information is pretty good. Things change daily. This is already a year and a half old data, but some of the same trends still exist. Getting back, the Rutgers University did the receding suburban perimeter, where is that for the first time in 50 years, growth in population is now focused in the urban areas, and the suburban areas are losing population. Right now, as Mike Kerwin says, we're on the right side of the fence in Somerset County, but we have to make sure. So we're still growing, but places like Hunterdon and Warren, Sussex are losing population. The game has definitely changed now, so that we need to react to that. And as we react to it, more more proactively, like Franklin Township has and the county has, better opportunities we have to remain competitive and not lose population and investment occurring closer in. So I know I didn't get into really the details, but we can talk later about it.
Yeah, and just to use a local example, to answer Councilwoman Sherman's question before about how you do this, somebody had mentioned the Elizabeth Avenue retail corridor, and what preceded that was a study. The township hired, I think, Blauston School, or some professors of records to evaluate the amount of retail development in town, and they just determined that at that point they had like 50% of the retail for a town of our population. Meanwhile, it's only grown since. And then to address that, we had a large area in town where you had a growing population, mostly seniors, and then you had a large employment base, but there was no retail, restaurants, what have you, to serve that population. And we created that retail overlay zone on Elizabeth, and it's gone gangbusters. In fact, probably, I would bet we're probably the only town in Somerset County that had a good amount of retail development going on in the depth of the economic recession.
Right.
And we still have more. We have another retail development that's going to be coming forward as well. So, I think it's, there was basically an analysis of kind of what retail or what market sector could work there, that we created the overlay zone that allowed for it, and then the market responded. So I think just that overall theme overall steps is something that you followed. It helps us, a good deal along the way. There's perhaps what we want to do is, again, with that first step of figuring out what the sectors are, the information may already be there in that 500-page document. Perhaps we want to go through that, figure out what that says, and how realistic some of these scenarios are for Franklin, and then move forward.
The county has a trends and indicators report, which we're currently updating. It's about 2 years old. That looks at a lot of these things in a lot more detail than we got into tonight. We look at job growth projections and age cohorts and all those, and population projections and employment projections. There's a lot of data there. We're in the process of currently updating it. So that's something that's available. And also the business partnership, they're an equal partner in this. We work very closely with them. So they also, through some of their economic development services, might have some of that data, so the township wouldn't have to go out and procure it either through a consultant or other purchasing this data. Between the county and the business partnership, we may be able to help you minimize some of your costs.
Councilwoman Robinson?
Yes. In part of your concept or consulting, what would be the low-hanging fruit for Franklin Township? Would it be the campuses that are on Davison Avenue, or we have an opportunity to capitalize on Hamilton Street as it leads into New Brunswick, where New Brunswick has already done a lot of the multi-use?
I think Franklin has a lot of opportunities. And I think from your location and your connections in New Brunswick and Rutgers University, you have a lot of natural locational advantages opposed to other communities that are along the I-78 corridor, for example, and standalone office campuses at different interchanges. So you have that going for the township. I think there's a lot of opportunity to reinvent the World's Fair and Davidson Avenue, Pearson. I think the Hamilton Street also provides a unique opportunity for the township as well. So I think you're blessed with the problem that you've got a lot of opportunities versus no opportunities. So I'm always the glass is half full type of person. So I think you guys will have a lot of infrastructure already to build on to move forward. So I think the township is in a good place compared to some of the other suburban areas, and even other suburban areas in the county as well as outside of Morris County or other places where you have the infrastructure, you have Rutgers University in your backyard. What are different research opportunities that you could create in either innovation zones or like the overlay zoning, as Mr. Healy was speaking about? I think you have a lot of opportunities and a lot of advantages other towns don't have. So.
Are there any other questions from the council?
Just a comment.
Councilman Prasad.
Thank you. We also have Princeton University, so so yeah, the two of them. There's a lot of natural things, and there's a lot of things we can learn from what's happening in New Brunswick right now. They're tearing down all these old houses and building the multi-use places, and we could be doing that and revitalizing Hamilton Street very quickly.
Yeah, and same there's a lot of similar development going on in Somerville Borough.
Right.
Building upon the train station and downtown. you have transit service on Eastern Avenue Corridor and Davidson's,
Right.
you have a lot of natural linkages.
Plus, the Rutgers Transportation Study, Councilman Vassanaro and I were involved with that, and they did make recommendations, but because of the economy, we didn't have the funding to, they recommended 2 loops, the east and west loop, and they told us that there's a potential the problem brewing, which is if the seniors who are active right now stop being active, you've got a transportation problem of providing them some kind of mode of transportation. And that's where their recommendation had come. And so we've got it, and it's just a question of finding the right funding for it and being able to do it. And perhaps we could talk to you about getting some funding for that. So, thank you.
I'm here, I'm
Yeah.
the county's willing to help if there's anything. I worked at the county for 18 years. I started as an intern and worked my way up to director, so I have a lot of vested interest in making sure that the county as a whole succeeds. So
Right.
I'm a willing partner here in the county, and I'll leave my bunch of
Councilman, and so Walter and I have known each other for those 18 years, and we've spoken, and the next step here is for Walter to come in with Mark and meet with our Economic Development Committee to talk about where we can take this from here. So that meeting will be arranged soon, and then we can start taking steps to either implement or not based on what the council feels are the needs of the town.
Can you just quickly talk about your destination marketing initiative that you're trying to do something with?
credit, but really the business partnership does a lot of that.
Okay.
My office assists with the
Okay.
Cultural Marriage Commission. We're on that advisory committee, and we just did the weekend trainings in the past, which was very successful in bringing people to the different historic sites in the county. So my office is involved in that and some of the branding efforts that are going on.
Right.
Come up with Somerset County brand so we can market ourselves because we've never done that before. But we're involved in it. It's really the business partnership does a lot of destination marketing.
Great.
And we can certainly bring those folks in and have a council discussion item on a future agenda.
We are working with them on destination marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually it's Mike Kerwin and I doing this very similar presentation.
Right.
About this. We've done it on several other municipalities, but even though he's not here, he's definitely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're on to B of our council discussion items, the 2015 Best Practices Inventory. Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, it's a requirement in the state statute that this be listed as a discussion item. If council has any questions on the best practices, by all means, I will do my best to answer them. If not, we can move on to the next item on the agenda.
Are there any questions from the council?
Nope.
Okay, then we will go on to the approval of the minutes. The following minutes are hereby presented for approval by the Township Council. Township Council Work Session Regular Meeting, September 8th, 2015, 7 p.m. Township Council Work Session Regular Meeting, September 29th, 2015, 7 p.m. Township Council Executive Session, September 29th, 2015.
I move that the minutes be approved as submitted.
Seconded.
Ms. McCarthy, will you poll the council?
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Francois?
Yes.
Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilman Kramer?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilwoman Robinson?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes for the ones relevant to September 8th, abstain from the ones relevant to September 29th.
Councilman Wright?
Yes.
Warrants in the amount of $2,410,000, $410,308.59 on October 13th, 2015 are presented to the Township Council for payment.
I move that the warrants as read be paid.
Seconded.
Ms. McCarthy, will you poll the council?
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Francois?
Yes.
Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilman Kramer?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilwoman Robinson?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Councilman Wright?
Yes.
Okay. Ordinance number 4119-15. An ordinance amending the code of the Township of Franklin, County of Somerset, State of New Jersey. More particularly, Chapter 50, Police Department, Section 50-24, Police Outside Work, Special Police Services, Chapter 226, Vehicles and Traffic, Section 226-32, Traffic Controls for Street and Highway Construction and Maintenance Operations, and Chapter 325, Special Events, Section 325-1, License Required, Exception, and Section 325-5, Application, the Township Attorney has approved the affidavit of publication and a public hearing is in order.
I move to open the meeting for a public hearing on this ordinance.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. This meeting is open for public discussion on this ordinance. Anyone interested in speaking, please raise your hand and when recognized, give your name and address.
Mr. Mayor, seeing no one come forward, I move we close the public portion of this hearing.
Second.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried.
Motion for passage.
Second.
Ms. McCarthy, will you poll the council?
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Francois?
Yes.
Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilman Kramer?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilwoman Robinson?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Councilman Wright?
Yes.
Ordinance number 4120-15, amending the code of the Township of Franklin, County of Somerset, State of New Jersey, more particularly Chapter 260, Parks and Recreation, Article 6, Griggstown Native Grassland Preserve, part of 10 Mile Run Greenway, Regulations, Section 260-25, General Open Space Preserve Rule. The Township Attorney has approved the affidavit of publication and a public hearing is in order.
Motion for public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. This meeting is open for public discussion on this ordinance. Anyone interested in speaking, please raise your hand and when recognized, give your name and address.
Seeing no one come forward, Mayor, I motion to close the public portion of the
Seconded.
hearing.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion has carried. Is there a motion for final passage?
So moved.
Seconded.
Ms. McCarthy, will you poll the council?
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Francois?
Yes.
Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilman Kramer? Yes. Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilwoman Robinson?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Councilman Wright?
Yes.
The items A through R as listed on the consent agenda portion of this meeting are presented to the Township Council for adoption.
So moved.
Seconded.
Ms. McCarthy, will you poll the council?
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Francois?
Yes.
Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilman Kramer?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilwoman Robinson?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Councilman Wright?
Yes.
Are there any nominations for boards, committees, or commissions? Okay. Then Resolution 15-417, authorize executive session, property acquisitions negotiation, Route 27. The Consolata property is presented to the Township Council for adoption.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. McCarthy, will you poll the council?
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Francois?
Yes.
Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilman Kramer?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilwoman Robinson?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Councilman Wright?
Yes.
Motion to go into executive session.
That's what we just voted on.
Oh, okay.
At this time, the Township Council will adjourn to the executive session to discuss property acquisition negotiations, Route 27 Consolata property. No other actions will be taken by the Township Council at the conclusion of this executive session. Therefore, the recording of this meeting will now end.